We answer your newly engaged questions.
Hi and welcome back to Bride Society. I'm Laura and this is Rebecca. And today we are, as Rebecca said, answering some of those questions that when you're newly engaged you have, because most of us haven't planned a wedding before. So it's all brand new and there might be lots of questions swirling around in your brain. So we asked over on Instagram for everyone who kind of is in the midst of wedding planning or who maybe is recently married, those questions that they had at the beginning of their wedding planning journey to be able to help you out if you're now in that position.
So the first question today is, how long does it take to plan a wedding? Good question. Good question. Not a straightforward answer. No. Can be a piece of string. How long did you take to plan your wedding?
I think it was about 15 months between getting engaged and actually having the wedding.
Yeah, and I took 2 years. It definitely doesn't need to take as long as that. You can take longer than that. You can, I know some people that kind of decide to book the date, book a venue several years in advance, and then that's all they do for a while. You know, it depends a lot on your available time, your other commitments in your life, like whether there's kids, the level of how demanding your jobs are, all those kind of things, saving money. And so I think factors like how big a wedding you're having, like the type of wedding. So if you're having, well, obviously then there's the money aspect and saving that, as I was saying, but also in terms of if you're having a smaller wedding, so there's just sort of 12 close friends and family where you could just maybe book a table at a restaurant as your reception-esque do, and that's what you want. Obviously, you can plan that a lot quicker than doing the more traditional full-out wedding. So it is quite a relative question. But in terms of the legally, if you're having a civil ceremony here, you have to go through the giving notice process, and that is 28 days, I think. Sorry, the number of days changed, but it's something like 28 days. I should double check that. If it's different, I'll put it in the description box below. So yeah, there is that process, and even with sort of a Church of England wedding, again, they have to read your banns of marriage. So there is a certain lead time. So you couldn't do it in a week, for example, even, if it was the smallest wedding in the world. So, sorry, it is a bit of a piece of string question.
Yeah, and the other things to consider are if there are suppliers that you specifically want to use, or maybe a venue that you specifically want to use. They obviously get booked up well in advance. So that might also affect how long you give yourself to plan the wedding if you want to wait for those particular people. Yeah.
And
vendors.
Yes, and actually this leads directly into the next question. So I'll let you go with that one.
What is the first thing we should book? So again, it's not just a one answer. There's a bit of ambiguity to it potentially. But we would say your venue is probably the thing you would book first when you start planning your wedding. It's probably the biggest expense of your whole wedding, but securing your venue kind of gives you your wedding date. Mm-hmm. But if your venue isn't the most important thing for you, or maybe you're planning to get married in either your garden or your parents' garden or something like that, you haven't got to secure somewhere else, or you're not going down the traditional wedding route, the first thing you should book is the supplier that is most important to you. So if you have, like I said previously, maybe a photographer that you are desperate to use, you want them to capture your wedding, make sure they are available, and then that date can be your wedding date, and then everything else can fall into place. So go for what's most important to you and book that first.
Yeah, and obviously, so if you're quite flexible, obviously, about the date, then that's definitely the way to go. Alright, so the next question was, I want to do some things for the wedding myself, but don't want to plan it all. Can I still have a wedding planner? So, I think when we think wedding planners, we sort of go, oh, we're handing the whole lot over. And you can do that. Obviously, that's an option. But You don't have to go that route. It's still your wedding kind of thing, and they're there to aid you with the wedding. So that could be to whatever degree you want. You're the one paying. And some wedding planners will have different level packages. So it might be that some just do like, you might just want them to do a venue search for you. They can do that. Some of them you can book for sort of a consultation hour. So you can, if you have these questions that we're talking about today and more, like you can just fire them at them for an hour, to basically talk to a wedding expert for an hour and kind of get all those answers. Or like it might be that you feel like you still want to do some things, like maybe you want to make the favours, you've got an idea in your head and you want to do that, but you just physically don't have the time on your hands to plan the wedding, or you don't have the confidence that you'll do it well. It's not your skill set. They're just there to fill in those, whatever the blanks are that you want them to do. Or even it might just be a wedding coordinator that you're actually looking for, not necessarily a wedding planner. So yeah, there's options, research it, but yeah, it's certainly not a black and white, you hand it all over or you do it all yourself.
Okay, next question is, if we choose to have a midweek wedding, will people come? And I think this is worry is probably too strong a word, that quite a lot of people maybe have, and you may choose a midweek wedding for loads of different reasons. It doesn't just have to be kind of budget related, because sometimes you can get better deals if you have a midweek wedding, but it might be a meaningful date, something like that. So you might choose to have a wedding on a Wednesday, and that's super common now. I think most days of the week weddings are happening. If you have specific people that have to be at your wedding, that you want them there at your wedding, just check with them maybe before you book to make sure that they will be available and able to come. Obviously there are some like professions that would make it more difficult to take time off during the week, teaching for example. I think unless it's a very close relative getting married, they generally aren't allowed to take the day off in the middle of the week for something like a wedding. If you're inviting children, again, it might be tricky taking time off school, but people will still come if they're able to.
Yeah. And I think obviously part of all that is trying to give people as much notice as possible. So although tradition dictates you don't send out your wedding invitations to like 3 months before, whatever it is, like give them as much, particularly if it's a weekday wedding, give them as much notice as possible. So like with save the dates or whatever, just in terms so they can book time off if they are in jobs where they can do that. But like I say, it can be difficult at certain times of year to be the person that gets that time off or those kind of things. So yeah, more notice in these scenarios, the better. So.
Just something else to consider for your weekday wedding is if you're a couple that really want to party and have a really kind of dancey reception going late into the evening. Again, it's just giving your guests that kind of consideration, because if they have to go to work the next day or if they need to book off a second day to be able to kind of celebrate late into the night with you, or whether you're okay with maybe some people leaving slightly earlier than they may do on a day where they haven't got anything the next day.
Yeah, so yeah, it's a bit of a pre-heads up about the order of the day, and like, the timing's not even just the pre-warning of the day itself, yeah. So our final question for today to help out you newly engaged couples was asking about how do we decide on a style for the wedding? So sort of thematic, like how it's going to look, how it's going to be. And really we think things like Pinterest are a really good place to start, and that's just sort of scrolling through and really just seeing what kinds of images you're drawn to. And more often than not, that you'll see a kind of theme appearing, like a pattern, some commonality between them. But other than that, I think just think about your usual style. Like when you look around your home or when you think about the type of things you wear, what kind of style is that? Are you a bit more boho? Are you a bit vintage? Are you chic, or is something quite classic? Because really, the wedding should reflect you two as a couple. And so if you're looking around at how you've already represented yourself in your surroundings, that will give you a clue as to maybe what to do in your wedding, and then that will end up being a more timeless, like the images and photos and stuff that you have from that will be more timeless for you, because it's more personal and reflecting who you are. So it's not necessarily just a on-trend theme necessarily. Like, it's about you.
So we hope you found that useful, and we've answered some questions that maybe you were also thinking of, and you've got a good now head start on starting planning your wedding. If you have recently got engaged, congratulations again. We're here every week with lots of videos all about weddings, tips, advice, DIYs, all things like that.
All the things.
All the things. So hit subscribe if you haven't already, give this video a like, and we'll see you next week.